Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast, Season 5. This podcast is for and about people getting ready for their first ever pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, Camino guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Well, my time in Spain this fall is coming to an end, and I am in Madrid getting ready to say goodbye once again to the country that has repeatedly changed my life for the better. This is Nancy, here to introduce you to my pilgrim friend Rich, and to have him share his story of walking 2 pilgrimages in one trip. I met Rich through my email list. He was a loyal listener of this podcast, and then he got on my email list and responded to a couple of the weekly emails I send. Rich's first email to me was so simple and friendly. He wrote, "Hola, gracias, buen camino." Each week I send out Camino-related content to the people on my email list. It could be tips for training or how to pack your carry-on bag for your flight over to the Camino, or ideas for horseback riding part of the way, or even how to guarantee to see the Botafumeiro in use at the cathedral in Santiago. I also share about events and podcasts that I hear about from other content creators in the Camino community and ideas for how to overcome whatever is getting in the way of you walking the pilgrimage. And I send information about the other services I offer to first-time pilgrims walking the Camino Francés, including special promotions and announcements for when registration opens up. If you would like to get on my email list, you can follow the link in the show notes or go to my website, thecaminoexperience.com. Now back to Rich. The second email he sent me shared his plans to walk the Camino Francés with his daughter-in-law. And the third email he sent me shared why he was feeling called to do this. He also let me know how much he likes the theme song for my podcast. In case you're interested, it's called Morning Walk, and I bought the license for it on a website called audiojungle.net. Rich signs off his emails as either Rich from Texas or Pastor Rich, and his tone is always so kind and uplifting. That's the man you'll be meeting in this episode. The conversation you are about to hear took place only 1 week after Rich returned home from the Camino, so everything is fresh in his heart and mind. Have a listen, and you're going to hear Rich's 4-word phrase that could change your life. Let's meet Rich. I'm here with Rich today. Rich, hi. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with you today.
Well, I followed your journey from afar and not at a great level of detail. What I remember about you, Rich, is when you first joined my email list, you wrote to me right away and said, "This is what I'm doing." And we had just this nice light correspondence. So every so often I'd hear from you. We're leaving in a couple of weeks. We are at the airport. We are in Pamplona. Where are you? And it was so fun just to do that countdown with you.
Yeah. I think we missed you by a couple weeks, and I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to run into you in Pamplona. But of course that didn't happen, but that's okay. Yeah.
Next time. That is actually one of my favorite things, is to meet up with my podcast guests or pilgrims who I have supported through coaching or the audio guide, meet them on the trail. And it's just so fun for me to see I'll say the fruits of my labor, to actually see
Sure.
people benefiting from the podcast, from the products that I put out. Yeah, it's so satisfying for me. And then to see real people on the Camino who I know already. Yeah, it's really great. Well, Rich, I'd like to start where I always start and ask you to put the pin in the map. So if you would share with us what route you walked, where you started and finished, and how much time you took for it.
Well, that's so. My walk, of course, is a little more complicated. My daughter-in-law, of all people, walked with me from the city of Pamplona. We actually got lost in first day on the way to Pamplona. We were taking the train out of Madrid, and we didn't get off on the stop we were supposed to. We were
Oh,
thinking,
whoops.
yeah, we didn't know we had to take two trains. So we got to spend the first night in Bilboa. I think
Oh,
that's how you pronounce it. Really
yeah.
cool little town. So we didn't make it there the first day, and then we had an Airbnb for 2 days set up in Pamplona. So we stayed and the next night we got there, and so we stayed in Pamplona for a whole day and got to go to the museum, the bullfighting museum, and when you said that that's one of your favorite cities and one of your podcasts, I can see why.
Yeah. What did you love about Pamplona?
My gosh, uh, the history, their I love their city um what's that called? Where the city center.
The
And
city
then
center and the Plaza Mayor, Plaza del Castillo.
yes.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, and that's food, and it was a good start. And it was really nice. Our Airbnb was not even a block away from the Camino which we had to go to pick up poles.
Perfect. That's that shop in Pamplona that's run by two former pilgrims from Hungary.
Yeah.
And their inventory is curated specifically for pilgrims, good people, and they know what we need.
And how did they get all of that stuff in that little building?
I know it's such a tiny shop,
Yeah.
and I actually the owner Istvan is a friend of mine, and he has his sights on expansion and getting a bigger shop. So we'll see what's to come from Camino in Pamplona.
It was a nice shop, and the owners weren't there. Another gentleman, but he was wonderful. He was very accommodating.
Yeah. Okay, so you started in Pamplona, and where did you finish?
Oh, so we walked to Frances, obviously.
Hmm.
My daughter-in-law and I finished in Santiago,
Okay.
but then we took a bus to Murcia and to Finicera, which I would have liked to walk to, but her time frame. She's a teacher and she needed to get back,
Okay.
not only to prepare for students, but spend time with my grandchildren as well. So yeah, she spent 30 days, over 30 days with me, and my son was ready for her to come home.
I bet.
Yeah. So then we went to those, and then we flew out of Santiago to Madrid, and then I flew to Porto and walked 5 days yeah, 5 days on the Portuguese, which
Oh, fantastic.
my brother. My brother flew in, and then we just walked. We call it the mini Santiago, because we went to this place that was the first church in Portugal dedicated to Santiago.
Oh, very sweet.
Yeah, so we got to do a mini. I wish we could have done the whole thing, but it wasn't. I got to be very transparent. It's not the same feel as the Frances.
Okay, well, we're going to get into that because I would love a compare and contrast, but I have some questions for you first,
Okay,
just to get the whole picture here. So, how many days did you spend? You said it was 30 days on the Frances?
30 days. So what happened was, since we cut the 2 days off of the coming over the Pyrenees, and a couple days we walked farther than the stages on the Buen Camino app, so that we
Okay.
could cut it to 30, because her birthday was the 13th of July and she wanted to spend it in Murcia. So we did. So we
Okay.
got in on the 12th and then took the bus the following day.
Okay, very good. Well, that gives us a picture of how long the journey was. And you said you used the Buen Camino app
I like that app a lot.
and you mostly followed the stages in the app. So what they suggested that worked for you?
That worked, except like I said, we wanted to cut one day off, so we were off
Okay.
stage a couple days. And then when we got into before we got into Sadia, we started to go off stage because
Okay.
the crowd in Sadia, it got crazy.
Yeah.
And not, I mean, I'm glad those people are walking the Camino, but it got to a point where there were too many people in front of us, so we started going off stage.
Okay. Yeah. And just so people know what off stage is, the apps and the guidebooks you'd probably discovered suggest stages with sort of average distances. And those places tend to be where most people stop at the end of the stages in the guidebooks in the app. So off stage means staying someplace else, essentially, not where the stage ends according to the guidebook or the app. Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that you did both and you had some experience with both.
Oh yeah, it was great. And between the your podcast, obviously, and the app, and then my daughter-in-law had downloaded the Ninja app and another one, but mostly we use the Buen Camino app.
Okay.
And it helped a lot with finding accommodations and things that we wanted to see and so forth. But there's some surprises too. I like the surprise.
We're going to get into some surprises. I have another question about the route and the your starting point. You started in what made you decide to start in Pamplona?
Well, my daughter-in-law, we looked at the amount of time. So she had told my son that this is how long she was going to go, and that would have been added the Saint Jean and the extra time if we would have walked. And he said, "Hey, I don't want you away that long." So we decided to cut the Pyrenees out just so that we could just make it within the time frame that we didn't want to miss the other two, meaning obviously in Santiago, and then the 2 bus trips to both of those places. So we had to cut some off, and that's what we did.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's just a matter of prioritizing. What is most important to you in this trip, given your parameters? And so for you, it sounds like it worked to cut what would be actually from Saint Jean to Pamplona can be anywhere from 3 to 4 days.
Mhm.
And then you chose to do the additional days at the end.
Right. Correct.
Okay, got it. Well, let's before we get into the actual experience of it, could you do a little compare and contrast between the Frances and the Portuguese?
Sure. We walked what we call the coastal route for the
Okay.
Portuguese. And we started in Porto. No, we didn't start in Lisbon, but we started in Porto. And it was my brother, as I said. And so we walked, instead of walking through the city, we walked down to the river and around the river, and a beautiful, beach scenery and so forth. But as far as we went, at least, there wasn't that. You didn't get like people stopping, go, Buen Camino, and all excited you were there. And like even in Pamplona, which is a big city in comparison to all the other cities that we walk through, I had people stop me and go, "Hey, you're going the wrong way." And you know, and people were excited about seeing you on the Camino on Frances. We didn't have a lot of that. And it might be right as soon as we left Pamplona, we started our family started building our Camino family.
Mm.
Like the day that when we hit the top of that the ridge there, overlooking in Pamplona, when you get to the top of that where the metal statues are.
Yeah, that's Alto del Perdón with that
Yes,
big, beautiful art installation. Yes.
that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
we had a lady take a picture, and she was with us most of the trip. Well, the first part of the trip, because she was a Spanish resident and she was only walking part way, but her name was Maria, and she started our family. And then as walking out of Pamplona, some Texans of all people, of course,
They found you.
they found us. I mean, we were just in Pamplona walking out, and they found us, and they were part of our adventure all the way to, off and on all the way to Santiago. And we took pictures with them in Santiago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this idea of a Camino family comes up a lot. Before you went to the Camino, did you have this idea in your mind that you would be forming a Camino family, or was that a desire that you had for your experience?
That's interesting you say that. So I did see the movie The Way. That was what prompted me 10 years ago to go do this, but I never
Okay.
had that long a time to do that. So I saw that and I thought, hey, that's that was for the movie. And I desired to walk this and learn what I could from it, but I wasn't thinking that really was going to happen.
Mm.
But my family got huge. I mean, it exploded, and people from all over the world, and people that couldn't even speak English. And we became close-knit people. And that was my favorite part of it, Nancy. It's the people that, I mean, all of it was a super adventure,
Mm.
a venture of a lifetime. I'm still adjusting to not having that. And we've been back for over a week, and it's hard. Not carrying a backpack, not walking. 27 kilometers a day, not having dinner with a bunch of people that you fall in love with. It's been tough. It's been that part of my life, and so I'm inviting people from my church over so that they'll hang out with me.
Yeah, the thing is, we think that
Mhm.
that's the Camino and it's only on the Camino that
Yeah.
these things happen. Yeah, so it's one of the questions, Rich, isn't it? What do we bring home from the Camino and how do we keep alive the parts that we loved so much? Is it as simple as inviting people over to your home?
I think in retrospect, the idea that builds from the Camino is that we're like-minded in what we're doing. And I have friends that I have gone through some tough, intense times. And I think that's what builds that. So I think you need to stay in touch with those people that you meet. Like, for instance, I wasn't in the military, but I was in the California High Patrol Academy. And there was during that time, it's like boot camp and college and all this put together. And I have a friend that I met during that time and that was, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. We still are friends because of the intensity of that and the walking of the 30 days and people having injuries and helping people through their injuries and that camaraderie at dinner and so forth. I think that's what builds that.
Mm.
I don't think you could just have people come, that that you haven't gone through something impactful like that.
Mm. That seems to be the key component is the shared experience and the common goal.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. Let me give you a real quick story, but as we came down off the mountain in Pamplona, there was a girl that had twisted her knee and she was in tears. And she had already walked before, but she had started years ago and she started Burgos, but she wanted to have the whole Camino experience. So she was in tears and, I stopped and I prayed with her. I offered my poles to her because I thought poles would help her and she didn't want them, but I walked down with her to make sure because as you're coming down the hill, there's some slick rocks or not slick, but loose rocks.
Yeah.
And then later in that whole experience, her name was Mary. Later in that experience, in one of the cities, my daughter-in-law stopped and the girl had blisters and she was not really taking care of the blisters the way she should.
Oof.
So my daughter-in-law had blisters, so she decided to buy new shoes. So my daughter-in-law and her went out to shop for new shoes. And then as we walked into Santiago, there she was, happy and smiling and she had made it. So and then we ended up having, a meal with her, and it was just that's the kind of, camaraderie and the things that people do for each other on the Camino,
Mm.
you know.
In what ways do you see you bringing that spirit back with you?
Oh man, there's so much to that question. That's a very complex question. I don't know if I told you this. I'm a pastor, so I spend a lot of time with people that have lost loved ones and that are going through difficult times. So I'd spend that time with people, but I think that going through this experience, I had empathy for them, but I think the empathy for people going through a tough time has changed even more. I think there's so much change in you as you walk the Camino, but I think the empathetic feelings that I have for people has grown considerably. When you think about difficult times, you pray for people, you get them through it, but walking them through it, and I think that's the idea that at the speed of walking, as you say, walking through it instead of just trying to get to the goal, but actually taking the time through the steps. One of the verses in the Bible that I thought about when I was doing this, it says, "Man decides the step, but God directs his path." And God directed my path. There were things that we made changes and accidents and got the wrong way, but there was always a reason. And I think that's the biggest thing I took home was that I need to walk through these at a different pace with people instead of just here's the goal, we got to get here, but actually going through the steps all the way through.
Oh, I got chills when you said that. So let's back up.
Sure.
Let's back up to 6 months ago, if I had asked you, hey, Rich, why are you going to walk the Camino? What would you have said?
Oh, so I would tell you because I do this, I like adventure. And in my opinion, that was going to be a great adventure to go on. Today, of course, it would be something different.
What would you have said 6 months
I
ago?
would have said, I want to do this adventure.
Okay. And what did that look like? What was the image in your mind of this adventure?
My adventure was like this. I had some stuff I wanted to lay down at the cross, right? So
Okay.
that Cristofero for me was almost the pinnacle, even more so the getting to Santiago. The Cristofero to me was it was a pinnacle. I needed to lay down some stuff there. So I knew that from watching the movie and then talking with you and hearing people's stories about that. And that for me was the pinnacle. So I knew that I wanted to walk this adventure to that place, lay down my burdens at the cross, like the Bible talks about. And then the rest was just going to be, you know, fun.
Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was that was what I thought when I left.
Okay.
Then building a relationship. I mean, I love my children's spouses. And one of the things I prayed about before my son got married, he's my oldest, was building a good relationship with my spouse's children because I didn't want to be that father-in-law that, nobody wanted at their home.
Mm.
Uh, so and that was important to me was building a great relationship with Melissa. And what was really cool about that whole story is every time people go, they're kind of looking at you, and I'm, 24 years older than her. And they go, hey, so what kind of relationship do you guys have? And Melissa was right out of the way. He's my father-in-law, okay?
Yeah, right. Don't go making up stories here.
Yeah.
I love
But they
that.
all said, oh, that's so cute. Not your daughter, but your daughter-in-law.
Uh-huh. It actually is really sweet. It's a story that I haven't heard that much. So I,
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so that's what you would have said 6 months ago. Now, as you look back on the actual experience, why did you walk the Camino?
I can tell you with no reservation that I believe that God wanted me to walk this to learn the lessons that I learned along the way. And the compassion that I have for people is greater than the compassion I had for people before. And because the people we met, the places I was that I was involved in that were let me be transparent. I'm not Catholic, right? And I grew up Catholic, but so a lot of the traditions in that were things that I didn't understand. So I had a lot of I wore people out. I was asking people questions that I asked the priest a couple questions. He said, "Okay, enough questions."
Thank you. God bless you. Move
Yeah,
on.
get out of here. But it was that the compassion I have for people that yeah, that's what I told my wife, and she died laughing when she goes, "Oh, I knew you would do that." But the compassion I have for people that are different than me is really important to me. Uh, and I've always had a little bit of that, but a much greater compassion. Um, the way we communicate is interesting because, of course, we have great apps now, Google Translate and all those different apps. But there was a mom and daughter from Korea, right? South Korea that walked with me. The daughter spoke a little bit of English. The mom spoke no English, right? But the way we communicated every morning, I would come up to them and we would just touch our hands together. And that was our whole communication. And just having, knowing people are people, just they just want to be recognized and celebrated. And, there were a lot of people that were different than me. I mean, probably everybody. But that was the greatest lesson I got from that was having more empathy for people that weren't like me.
We can use more of that in the world, can't we?
Oh, for sure, for sure. When you asked me about it, I think I emailed you and said, what if our world leaders could walk the Camino?
Wouldn't that be something?
Oh yeah. Could you imagine? having instead of having a world summit where they're walking the Camino talking about.
Yeah. And instead of talking about the people they represent
Mhm.
behind closed doors, talk to them on the trail while you're walking up a hill
Oh yeah.
and down a hill and caring for your feet and
Yeah.
trying to find food on a Sunday. Yeah. And let's see if you can get an insight into how to serve and support people.
Oh yeah, that would be, I think maybe before we run for public office, at least here in the United States, maybe we should have to walk the Camino.
There you go. It must be on your resume, or
Yeah.
we're not even
Yeah, we're
looking
not
at
voting for
you.
you.
I really appreciate those insights, Rich. Really appreciate them. Any other lessons that you walked away with? Any other shifts in perspective that you could share with us?
Don't put Vaseline on your feet.
Don't?
There's a lot of insights, but it was funny because I learned here in Texas when I was walking, I heard somebody say, "Oh, put Vaseline on your feet before you walk." So I did. The next day I had blisters, and I had been walking for months without blisters.
Hmm.
So when we got there, my daughter said, "Oh, you need to put Vaseline in your feet." I said, "I did that, got blisters." She goes, "Oh no, you put it on the night before." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." Next morning, both had blisters.
Oh my goodness.
So I think what happens as I'm thinking about it, and somebody on your podcast, I think it was you, said that what causes blisters is friction and moisture.
Mhm.
Well, what you're doing when you put Vaseline on your feet is you're holding moisture into your feet. So I think that's why I got blisters. Oh, one of the things that I would tell people is your idea about putting socks on the back of your backpack and changing, that's heaven.
That's lifesaver, right?
Yeah, every 5 kilometers, wherever we stop first for coffee at 5 kilometers around that, I change my socks. We'd stop for a quick lunch, I change my socks. So every like 5 kilometers, I change my socks and it helps.
It really does. And you're right, it is heaven. That moment when you
Oh,
take off the sock and your foot's out in fresh air.
yeah,
It's like, oh, glory be.
yeah. It might take a couple extra minutes, but it's worth every second.
It's so worth it.
Yeah.
And that actually is one of the tips I hear about the most from people who listen to my podcast and write back to me
Uh,
after they get done walking. That one tip. So for me, it's every hour.
mhm.
Every 5 kilometers is a great measure because that's a nice round number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boots off, socks off, pin those to the back of your backpack to get the sweat to dry off and put on a fresh pair. Whoa.
People started teasing me about having the two socks on the back of my backpack. And then it became three socks because I lost one sock, but I brought plenty of socks. But
Okay.
so I put the extra one on. So people go, "Hey, I have your extra sock." Because we saw people do that. They would not necessarily socks, but hey, this is somebody else's. And they hung it on their backpack and hey, that's mine. And it was,
That's great.
and then I lost another one of my socks. So now I have two unmatching socks, but
You have two. That's a
yeah.
pair. You know what? I'm not sure you're getting judged
Yeah.
by
No, I
your
don't think anybody cares.
nobody cares as long
Yeah.
as they do the job. Oh, that's great. Well, I appreciate the Vaseline perspective because some people swear by it
Mhm.
and some people don't.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. There's the Camino right there.
Yeah. There's so many things like that, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
people,
Sleeping
oh,
bag or
yeah.
sleep sack,
Mhm.
rain poncho or rain jacket, trekking poles or walking stick. Yeah. Yeah. One of them or none.
That was another tip that you had said. And I talked to this young lady that was having difficulty in buying a pair of trekking poles because she was falling all over the place. And I like the way you said it. They're like having a moving guardrail or
Moving banister is what I call
yes.
them. Yeah. Portable.
Yeah, it really works.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my balance right there. I have wobbly knees. And so I always use the banister going downstairs. I don't grip it, but I always have one hand on it to be ready to exert pressure if I need to catch myself from falling.
Sure.
Yeah. So that portable banister is it as
Yeah,
far as I'm
I love
concerned.
that one. It works. It
Yeah.
works. And it helped me get up hills, down hills, not falling in
Fantastic.
rocks. There's what's the name of that port city you come into? Beautiful port city. Um, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. There's a bell as you come in. It's a beautiful uh river, big.
Porto Marin after Sadia?
Yes, there is a sharp decline in that. And
On the way in, there is.
yeah,
Yes.
if you don't have poles there, it's
Ooh,
dangerous.
yeah. A couple spots. There are a few spots on the Frances that it
Yeah,
really does make a difference. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
that was one for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was glad I had poles there, but
Well, let's do another backup, and I'd like to hear about your planning and preparation process. How did you get ready for this big adventure you were heading out on?
so I retired a year ago last February. So it gave me time. I had always wanted to do this. Well, not always, but for 10 years since I found out about it by watching the movie, I wanted it to do this, right? And I was planning, but I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do at least 6 weeks. And I was a leader in a grocery store chain. I worked it, and so I retired in February. It was kind of a forced retirement. So I had all this anxiety about that as well.
Mm.
So here in Texas, my kids all come every other Thanksgiving, and we have a big Thanksgiving meal. And my daughter-in-law and I had already talked about going on this. So we decided in November of last 2023 that we were going. So that day I started walking. I'd been walking like 2 miles, but that's 2 miles is nothing here, right?
That's to the first coffee.
Not even the first cup.
It won't even get you to the first coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny you say that because we did 2 coffees a day too.
Yep.
And I got stuck drinking espressos because I don't like milk in my coffee.
Okay.
My wife bought a espresso machine because I don't, because now I drink
You're
espresso.
hooked. You're hooked on the drug of the Camino
Yeah, it is. It's
in
crack.
physically and metaphorically.
Yeah. So I started walking. I moved up to 5 miles, then at 8 miles, and then 8 miles with my backpack. And then that's how I started training. And then I think, well, I could tell you, my daughter-in-law and and I don't know if I've already said this, but my daughter-in-law sent me your podcast. So I started listening from the beginning, and it'd been a while. You've been doing it for a while. And then I listened all the way through, and I get these tips. So we had that. I went to REI, bought my backpack. I bought 3 different pairs of shoes. The ones I picked that I walked the whole Camino in, which worked out perfect for me. And then walked in those, and I'm a planner. So
Mhm.
I do stuff really crazy. So I bought my sleep sack and I slept in that for a while because I wanted to see what it was like. I didn't sleep on a cot or something. I still slept in my comfortable bed. I started using a special soap, or not special soap, Dr. Bonner's, because I wanted to see what it was like on my hair and my body. And I washed my socks with it and hung my socks up. How long did it take to dry?
Full on test drive.
Yeah, I'm a freak about stuff. I packed my backpack, weighed myself, weighed the backpack. Okay, Nancy said it's supposed to be 10% of your ideal weight, not 10% of your body weight. I am I gonna use a water bottle, or am I gonna use a bladder? I ended up buying the bladder. I'm glad I did, but it weighs, I added, 2 liters of water, which weighs 6 pounds. Added that to so then I had to decide what I'm not gonna take. And so that's how I planned all of those things.
Hey, I'm glad the podcast was useful.
Oh yeah. And then socks. I noticed you sent out an email about socks.
Uh-huh.
Great idea. I use Darn Tough,
Okay.
but what's funny is I use the winter weight, the heavier sock, because they're more padded,
Even in June.
even in June.
Okay.
But we actually had a very light June. And by the way, one of the things that you said on one of the podcasts that I want to highlight is the Maceta in June was beautiful.
Oh, tell me about it.
Oh my gosh, the flowers were outrageous. We fell in love with those. Both Melissa and I fell in love with the red poppies that were
Hmm.
everywhere. But then all of the different flowers I was like, oh my God, God can really arrange flowers, because white flowers and yellow flowers and tall purple flowers and the red flowers. And it was beautiful. And then the fields of of wheat. And so there was one of the things I loved about the Meseta, out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I don't know I don't even remember where it was. There was a concrete bench, a white concrete bench out in nowhere. And I told Melissa, hey, I'm gonna sit here for a little while. And she kept going. We split up quite a bit because she walks a lot faster. And as I'm sitting on the bench, friends of the Camino were walking by and they would sit down for a little bit and we'd talk and we'd have water together and it was on the Meseta. And if we would have skipped that, like some people suggested, I would have missed all of that.
Mm.
And I would not have wanted that.
Mhm.
So that was a lot of talking for one question.
Well, we're going to clarify some more, so don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. Now, in terms of planning, did you plan your stages in advance? Did you book any accommodations in advance?
Just the one well, before we left, just the one in Pamplona, which we wasted a whole day because we got lost and spent the night in the city we weren't going to. But Pamplona at the Airbnb, and then a couple times we booked during the trip.
Okay.
I forget what city it was. It was raining on us hard, and it started getting cold, and it was a little bit miserable. We stopped in this Berge, just to get some coffee or something. By the way, the hot chocolate there is outrageous.
Put that on your list.
So we had a hot chocolate, and Melissa goes, Dad, can we just get a private room tonight? Yeah, I don't care, So we got a private room in this little city, and it made a big difference. But we had to book that in advance,
Okay. So most of the time you stayed in the albergues.
The albergues or the hostels or the monasteries or whatever
Okay.
it was called,
Okay.
which were great too.
Great. So you've talked about a couple things that people could see as bumps in the road. So the weather, when it rained really, really hard and it got cold, when you missed your stop on the train and ended up in a completely different city. So now you're talking about them as just all part of the journey. It doesn't sound like they were big deals at all. But how were you in the moment when you realized you missed your stop on the train?
My daughter-in-law, she's high strung sometimes, which is a gift for her, but she said, oh, we're lost. And we, of course, our Spanish is, I practiced Spanish from November on, and I live in South Texas, but South Texas Spanish is nothing like Spanish, but
No.
Tex-Mex we call it. So she goes, what are we gonna do? I said, let's just get off the train. Because it kept going north or wherever away from Pamplona. So we got off and then we had an adventure. So everything became an adventure.
There was your word going into it, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. And so she was a little stressed at that point, but once we got off there and this man on a scooter flirting with the girl at the ticket counter helped us get to a hotel because we couldn't take the train back because it was too late. And we stayed in this really cool Basque city, which we would not have done. We would have put it on. So everything that became a problem was a surprise.
Oh.
And we had a little difficulty in Santiago getting back to Madrid. And after the first couple problems, my daughter-in-law realized, hey, you know what? It's just part of the adventure. And that for me became a huge event because she laid it down and just let God deal with her in whatever way, because everything worked out every time we had a problem. We made the mistake of not booking a train ticket from Santiago to Madrid.
Why was that a mistake?
Because there was no room.
Train sold out?
Sold out, which
Okay.
you wouldn't think, but remember, Spain just won the soccer championship. So everybody was taking the train somewhere.
Going somewhere, celebrating. Okay. So it was a busy time. So if that doesn't happen all the time, but it is good to note that it's not a bad idea to start looking at train tickets a couple weeks before your travel date. Yeah.
And by the way, I would personally, I would not use Rio to Rome.
Rome to Rio, that app.
Yeah.
How come? Why do you say that?
Because there's some things on it that are misleading. Like there's not a train in some of the areas that say there's a train.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would use the app for I think it's, what is it? The train app. There's actually, I have it.
There is. It's called Renfe, Renfe. And you can also get renfe.com if you don't get the app on your phone. That's what I always recommend using for the trains because they're the train company. They run the trains.
Yep. That's a great point.
Yeah, Rome to Rio is a good starting point
Mhm.
to get you an idea of what the options might be. But Rome to Rio, my experience is that it is designed to get you a route no matter whether it's a good route or not. And so it might say, sure, you can get from here to there. It'll take you 16 hours,
Yeah.
whereas the direct train is 2 hours,
Yeah.
but it's going to get you there. My other go-to is Google Maps
Yeah.
to first get an idea of what the options are. I find Google Maps to be probably even a little bit better than Rome to Rio in my
Yeah.
experience.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
But then the bus was full too.
Oh gosh.
So then I have a Ryanair app, and I
Hmm.
looked, and there was a plane. It cost a little more, and it didn't get out till midnight. And we were there. We were in Santiago the extra day, then a whole day, which we didn't. We wanted to spend in Madrid. We got to Madrid, and
That's it. You got to your
yeah,
destination.
yeah. So it was okay. Everything works out.
Great. It's great. So any fun stories you'd like to share? Any really truly memorable experiences or surprises you'd like to share with us?
Yes, there's so many. I think for me, the most memorable experience was the one that I spent on the at Cristofero. Walking up that hill was incredible. But when I got there, we decided, Melissa and I decided we wanted to watch the sunrise from there. So we're
Lovely.
both on there, and she's videotaping me dropping my stone that I brought. My wife had painted for me, and I brought. And then from the background, there was another lady from Texas I hadn't met. She took a picture of us it's both standing there at the Cristofero, and it's a silhouette picture. It's one of my favorite ones. And then coming off the Cristofero, as we were walking down, I told Melissa as we're walking it down, we're just kind of, you know, talking about it and recapping, all the things that meant to both of us. Then as we're coming out of that, we come down, and I said to Melissa, as we're coming down the way, I said, this is such a beautiful view. Wouldn't it be awesome to have a cup of coffee and just sit here and watch this view? And as soon as I said that, we come around the corner, and there's that, what I'm talking about?
I
Oh,
do. I know it. It's size coffee bar. Yeah.
oh my gosh, that is the greatest place
The
in the world.
best. The
And the
best.
lady there was such a sweetheart.
Yep.
So we sat there and had coffee, and my daughter-in-law had a croissant, and I had fresh every morning. That's what I had. My first meal of the day was a double espresso and an fresh squeezed orange juice. And
Beautiful.
yeah, it was awesome. So that's my favorite.
It's great. So just so people know, the Cross of Iron is situated, I believe it's the highest point on the Camino Francés. It's 2 kilometers past the village of Fontebadon. And then 2 kilometers past the cross is Size Coffee Bar, which is this wonderful little trailer that she's turned into a bar.
Yeah.
And it's got tables and chairs, and you have this incredible view up in the mountains. And it's perfectly located. If you started early and got to the cross for sunrise, boy, you want that coffee, don't you?
Oh, those little surprises,
Mhm.
those people that run those are angels. They're beautiful people. I don't think I had any interaction that I didn't treasure on the
Oh,
Princess. Now, Portugal, there were a couple, but
well, the people who set up those types of businesses, many of them have walked the Camino themselves, and they know what pilgrims are going through. They know what it takes to walk the Camino. And so someone like that is serving with a pilgrim's heart, the
yeah,
heart of, shall we say, gratitude and humility.
yes.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Gratitude and humility, I would say.
Yeah. How about another story? You got another one for us? Let's
Oh, I
take
have
one more.
lots of them. So there was in one of my favorite people that I met, there's oh man, what is the name of that town? So we had decided a group of people that I've walked with, they said, hey, let's just do a pilgrim's dinner here. We'll just get stuff and cook in the kitchen. And so we had to find a store, and the people that were running the albergue were from Australia, and they said, oh, there's 3 stores here, but you gotta go to this one. So we walked down, and there's this couple there, probably a couple my age, maybe a little younger, a little older, who knows. And the store is the size of this room that I'm in currently, maybe a 10 by 10. And they had everything you want in there. They had a whole meat counter in there. So this man, sweet, sweet man, he started giving us samples of everything, right? Then he gave us bread with meat and cheese, like almost more food than we needed, right? So we bought our stuff, and the little lady, his wife, she goes, oh, I gotta give you these. So she saves the 1 cent euros or whatever. I don't know how but on the back of the 1 cent euros or one whatever is the picture of Santiago, right? So she shined those up and she gave them to us. Yeah, and then he gave me a package of pate that I didn't, I didn't pay for. He gave them to me, and they were so sweet. I took pictures and I prayed for them, and they were just, it was an incredible. They were just so, the love of God just flowed out of them.
Mm.
And then they told the story. So I got to tell you the story. And
Okay.
so they stopped me and they said, we got to tell you this story, Rich. They had walked the Camino, I don't remember how many years before, many years before. And when they got married, they tried to have children, they couldn't have children. And so they, for years and years and years, so they walked the Camino. And during the Camino, someone prayed for them. I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was a priest or someone. And when they got back from the Camino, she was pregnant. And she had the baby. So then they had their son. So then they moved a business to that town to take care of pilgrims.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that great?
That's beautiful.
That's why I want to go back, because I want more stories like that.
You want more stories. You want to meet more people, bear witness to their lives and their
Oh,
journeys.
yeah. I know why you're hooked on it.
Yeah. There's such a spirit of generosity. I said it before, gratitude, humility, kindness to strangers. And I find that it's like a mirror, right? It reflects back at me. So I see it and I'm around it more. I become it more. And it's actually so satisfying to live with those qualities as opposed to frustration, angst, dread, regret. These are better. They're so much more enjoyable to live with those qualities.
Better.
We'll say they're better. Yeah. Wow. Rich, I love these stories. I have a feeling I could listen to you all day long, but I do have to wrap up the podcast episode at some point. So let's do this. Let's end on this note. If you were talking to someone who's considering walking the Camino and they're on the fence, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm a physical person, so I'd push them over to the other side so they could go.
Perfect. Okay. A little gentle nudge.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? So I love your podcast. I've listened to every single one of them. I listened to the one with the military guy on the Camino when I was walking the Camino, which made me cry.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. I can't wait to have him back on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The lady that dealt with all those physical challenges and had to make a special order a special container for her meds. And so
yeah,
that made me cry. Those things, those human journeys. When I was on, like, my wife said, oh, I could never do that again. When I got home, we shared all this information. So we're planning to go together. She has the same story that you had when you first went. She's a caretaker, the primary caretaker for a 97-year-old father. He lives with us.
Bless her.
Yeah. So we are figuring a way that we can take that amount of time and go on this. Because like I told her this year, or when I planned it, I said, I don't know if I have tomorrow, so I'm going to do this to make me a better person. But it really did, it really made me more empathetic. But I would sum that question up, and I know I've taken a long time just to answer one question. But there was an Australian couple that we met and we had dinner with them, and they were in their 70s. And I was sharing the story and about my wife, and they weren't really physically fit 70-year-olds. You could see that they were struggling, but they've walked it a number of times. And so they said, call your wife. I called my wife, and they said, hey, you can do this. So, and now all the stories she's really excited about doing.
That's it right there. You can do this.
Mm-hmm.
4 words that'll change your life. You can do this.
If we just listen to your podcast, all the people with all the struggles that went and did it, and then been encouraged to do so because of your podcast, I think you've given us a service that is, people were saying to me, there was an Irish man, his name's Brian. He's a life coach, a really neat guy, a young guy too. And he said to me, I don't think of myself 65. That's just not in my mindset. So what? There's a hill. Let's climb it. And he turned to me and go, Rich, in his Irish brogue, he goes, you're smashing it.
Love it.
Yeah. So I use a lot of his stuff now.
Smashing it. Isn't that beautiful? Wow. What a great assessment.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I know that question went way longer than you.
No, that I want more. I want more. Yeah. So thank you. I really appreciate your insights and your perspective. I had a feeling I would. We didn't get to talk before you went on the Camino, but I just had a feeling I would really enjoy hearing your after the Camino story or perspective. So thank you for that.
I want to thank you though, not only for what you did before my Camino, but asking for my perspective on it, because it was a journey that I want to share with. And I have a good platform for sharing, being a pastor at church. Everybody's asked, so I'm going to put up a special night so they can come and just hear the stories. But
fantastic.
Yeah. But the platform that you provide is an incredible platform. So thank you. You don't have to thank me. I want to thank you.
It's my pleasure. Really is my pleasure. Yeah. And I come out so far ahead. I know you all think that you're coming out ahead, but for me to bear witness to these journeys and to have the honor of telling you can do this, there's no greater gift for me than to be able to uplift people and encourage people.
Empower them.
Empower them. Those are my words right there. Uplift and empower. Yeah. So thank you. What you've just told me, Rich, is that it's happening, that the work that I'm doing is making that difference that I intended to. So thank you very much for letting me know that.
Well, you should have known it anyhow, but yeah.
All right. Well, we could keep the Love Fest going all day long, but we'll have to wrap up this episode. So any final words before we wrap up?
I think you said it, and we both said it. You can do this. I would encourage anyone that's considering this, prepare and do.
Great.
Every journey starts with the first step.
Very good. We'll end on that note. Rich, thank you so much for being with me today. Such a pleasure.
If you ever are and you need something, let us know.
Thank you so much, Rich.
No problem.
All right. Take good care.
God bless.
Bye.